ChatGPT and GenAI tools have hit the mainstream. The chatter was everywhere, by almost everyone. We feel the discussion has been more philosophical than practical. We know enterprise technologists are using real AI to create efficiencies that result in real business outcomes. So, we created a show to talk to real practitioners about real-world active projects that are leveraging this exciting new technical advantage. Welcome to LiveAI.
Welcome to another installment of LiveAI, the show that brings you behind the scenes of real-life enterprise AI use cases. With me today is Kent Langley, co-founder and CTO of OpenEXO, a digital transformation company and creator of AI Advantage, a new applied AI training program. Kent was a global keynote speaker for Singularity University for 7 years, teaching AI, data science, and digital transformation. And he's a serial entrepreneur with multiple exits. Welcome to the show, Kent.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we could catch you on this day when we're back in this beautiful California weather. Now, you've been involved in many practical use cases over the last few years, and I know you could talk about a lot of them. Which one are we going to talk about today?
Oh, gosh. When I first started speaking with you, we talked about the work that I've done on what we call the Internet of Animals. That is a project called Asymmetrics, which I am extremely proud of. There's another project that is a bit of a passion project for me, because I think, like you, I'm a voracious reader, and I found myself one day wanting to talk to the book, maybe being a little bit crazy one day, but then AI came along, so I actually made a project called Bookbot to talk to the book. We could talk about that a little bit. And that has one of its pilot things over in the world of EXO, which you mentioned. And then there is work that I'm doing teaching people how to leverage all of these new tools and processes and techniques and technologies that I call AI Advantage. And that's just my latest sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, and also a bit of a passion project for me at this time. But it's been a lot of fun. So we can talk about any of those things, all of those things, any way you want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, all very interesting. Before I get to the one that I'm very biased about, because I really want to explore this concept. I think it's exciting about the books. It's Internet of Animals, not Internet for Animals.
Correct. Yeah, I haven't done that latter one yet.
I was like, you could retire tomorrow if you invented that one. I know, like, my cats at home would just be, if they could control the internet and just watch cat or bird videos all day, like, you got a winner right there. That's your next exit.
That is possible. It would be a little weird. Let's talk about that after the show.
Yeah. We'll get on. So on this, I'd love the high level concept behind Bookbot.
Yeah.
And, like, what is it? Why did you invent it?
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty voracious reader myself. I think I read, my Kindle app tracks, activity. I think I read like 30 books in the first 6 months. Nice. And I'm really, really curious about what you're doing with Bookbot.
Okay. So I found myself, one of the businesses I've been building with my partner, Salim Ismail, is OpenEXO, as you mentioned. Salim wrote a book, and the book is called Exponential Organizations. It's not my book, it's his. And I just watched him over the course, this was the second edition, the first edition since 2013 or 12 or whenever that was. I just watched over and over and over people just want to talk to him, the author in this case. And there's just never enough of an author to go around. And that's not a good enough answer, right? There should be a way that you can engage with an author through the power of their words. And there is. It's called a book. We love books. Like you said, I love books. I don't even know how many books I read. I just read all I can jam in my brain. So I said, what if I could talk to the books I love? And maybe what if I could talk to books that I don't know if I'm going to love and save myself some time? Sometimes that's a good thing too. So I was sitting there, I was looking at this book, and I was thinking, well, I mean, those words came out of the author's mind, so they are what that author thinks. And there's a lot of them. Typical book has 50,000 words. So most people you meet, you don't get 50,000 words out in a conversation. So I thought, well, that's enough.
Sure.
I can use that.
That'd be a really long conversation.
It would. I've seen some podcasts that long, though. So I thought, that's enough data. to create a proxy for the mind of the author as a chatbot. And we built a pilot. I built the pilot over a weekend at home on my laptop. I was shocked, honestly. I got to the end, I was like talking to the thing. I was like, wait a minute, that worked. This is working. It's not great, but it works. That's V0. And I called up a friend of mine who I happen to know runs a company who hosts bots. And I said, could you adapt my pilot to your framework? And he goes, that sounds like a lot of work, Kent. I don't know if I want to do that. And I was like, well, just take a look at it. I sent him the code. I just sent it over to him. He called me back in 2 hours. He goes, I got it working. And I said, well, what? He goes, I got it working. I haven't talked to you for a couple of years. You don't know about all the changes to my infrastructure, and your code worked. And I'm like, oh, okay. So show it to me. And he showed it to me, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. It works. And so I had my bot, and I didn't have a name for the thing at the time. And I said, then I went and I talked to my co-founder, Salim, and I said, I've got this thing that I did to your book. I don't you want to, I was worried that he might be offended or not like it. Are you trying to steal my brain? And he was just like, whoa, that's amazing. I don't ever have time to talk to everybody. Yeah, I was like, okay, show it to me. Can we put it on the website? And I'm like, yeah, let me go figure that out. Now that actually took a long time. It was a lot harder to do the integration, but only because of single sign-on problems, not because of the bot.
Sure.
And that's how this thing was born. And then people started calling me, and they're like, I saw what you did with Salim's book. Can you make me a book bot? And I was like, a what?
Oh, wow.
I was like, can I make you a what? And they're like, can you make me a book bot too? Other authors started calling me. And I said, yeah, I'll make you a book bot, sure. So I call up my friend. I'm like, here's another one. And he's like, Kent, you have to stop doing this. And then he goes, look, I'm just going to make you an interface so you can add the books yourself. And then a day or so later, he called me back and he gives me an interface. Now I can load all the books in that I have and that I want. And sure enough, after a while, we ended up with, I think we have around 100, 110 books in there now. And we've wrapped it in the modicum of a potential software as a service kind of virtual library model. And we're just experimenting. It's a toy, to be quite clear, but it's a toy that totally works. It's scalable and it runs, and you can now talk to the books that you love if it's a book bot.
So now when people are going and interacting, they're interacting as if the bot were the author, or is it also like the world and the characters, or like from like stories or content that's in there?
Great question. We specifically make sure that people know that we're not trying to make it be the author. It's the book as a proxy to the author, and so we give them names. So for example, there's a book called Actionable Gamification by Yu-Kai Chow, and I called that one Octobot, because Octobi is its name. So it's like sounds like a rapper, Octobi. And and Octobot is a proxy to the mind of Yu-Kai Chow through a rather voluminous book called Octalysis. Right? Well, the book is called Actionable Gamification. The framework that the book's all about is called Octalysis. That's why I named it Octobi. And so no, you're not pretending like you're talking to the author. You know you're talking to Octobi, but you also know that Octobi knows everything the author knows. And then we let the authors write these things called ghost chapters. We call them ghost chapters. We made up this terminology.
Oh.
And what you put in the ghost chapters is, say, the talk you gave yesterday, or the 87 PowerPoints you have, or that other book you wrote half of that you wish you had a volume 2, right? And then...
So you're like enriching the information from the book with this continuous learning of new content they're creating.
Correct. And this is one of the coolest things about the book bots, is that we have, as far as we know, we have the largest potential knowledge store available for an LLM-based application built on a custom data set. Sorry, that was a lot of word salad and techie bits, but long story short, you put a lot of stuff in there. and so,
yeah,
it's a really powerful model. I deployed the very, very first one that became Bookbot, was deployed in around January of 23. So if you do the math on that, for when LLMs were online, when these things called RAG applications came around, you'll see that it was extremely early, probably too early. But that's why it was an experiment.
Yeah. So concept seems really intriguing when it was first launched, and then maybe till today. When you look at the kinds of interactions that are occurring, what are people typically doing to interact that's caused this mini movement to occur, where people are interested in exploring the context of an author's mind through a set of works that they've done? How do you find people really getting some use out of it, or is there like repeated use and trends that you're seeing out of that?
Yeah. So first, we don't keep the logs, right? So people talk to these things, and they treat them sometimes like people, and they say a lot of stuff. So we only keep enough for errors and things like that. But
so I don't have to worry about that kind of provocative questions I may want to ask.
Yeah. Say whatever you want to the bot. Yeah. Say what? Yeah, exactly. So that first, I just want to make sure that's clear, because it's kind of important, right? You have to have that expectation of privacy, and that's the ethical side of it. The couple of use cases I'll share off the bat. One is a very interesting guy. Let me look up the name of his series. Okay, this is not related to the work that I do at OpenEXO. It's just another person who's in digital transformation. So he has a 4-book transformation series. There's 3 volumes and a workbook. So that became the data that he put in his bot, and he named his bot Sophia. And Sophia now knows everything that's in that gentleman's books. Now, what he does with it is super cool. He's on stage a lot. So he gets up on stage, he puts Sophia up next to him, and he has conversations with Sophia live. And so what happens now is when he leaves the stage, he's leaving behind a link, and anybody can use Sophia and have effectively access to him through the proxy, right? The data. And we also teach these sometimes. They can have little buttons on them, like buy the book or call me now or things like that. So it can become useful for lead generation, which is a nice marketing aspect. And that's one. Now another person, he also saw the original Bookbot in its form on a website, and he says, I really want that for myself. Now the form that those takes are, you make a digital version of your book, and then you put the chatbot next to it, the Bookbot next to it. And that way, as you're reading the digital version of the book in, say, one window, you can be asking questions about what you're reading in the other. That's like literally sitting in the room with the author while you're reading their book. That's super cool. And it's really
almost like you're attending like a book reading where the author is there. So you've got a chance to ask them questions after they've read their chapter that they're reading to you that day.
Exactly. And it goes further because you can then get more analytical. So other authors are using it to dissect their own book. So they'll go in and they'll ask it questions that they think they answered. And then they might find out that their argument wasn't as strong as they thought. And so the Bookbot can give them feedback about their very own book. So in cases like that, we have authors uploading draft books and using it to help refine the book before they get to the final publication. And in some cases, they share those draft books publicly. In other cases, they keep them private. A very interesting use case, probably more interesting from a business model perspective, is that publishers have discovered that if they put their whole catalog in as Bookbots, that it becomes a great tool for marketing and sales and supporting their authors. So that's a bit of a more meta use case, not just the author, but more meta, depending on the author, whether they're doing their own direct or whether they're working with a publisher.
Sure. Now, when you think about this amount of information, I mean, and books can be, quite large.
Oh, yeah.
Any typical book that's nonfiction for any topic, anywhere between 3 and over 1,000 pages. And if you've got multiple tomes plus workbooks, how did you think about the architecture? Like, give us a little bit of a glimpse under the hood of, how does this thing come together? How does it actually work? I know that's one of the big questions of why some of our audience watches this as well, is cool idea, interesting use case. Like, how did you actually pull it off? Because we're all kind of learning together right now as industry matures.
First and foremost, it's really important to understand that when you're building a generative machine learning model applications, LLMs, large language models, making one work on your laptop or making one work even on a small server in a data center is one thing. But if you intend to roll that out to tens or hundreds or thousands or millions of people, it's a whole other ballgame. This is true of anything that you put on the internet. I've spent many, many years building large-scale applications. The thing about LLM-backed apps is it works different. It's a whole other ballgame when you go to scale. So if you're going to try to build all that yourself, and I just want to set some context before I go into the hood there, but if you're going to try to build yourself, you need to consider that the architecture for building these types of applications is completely different from the architecture for building, say, like a website. It just doesn't work the same. It's a real-time streaming-based application. Okay, so now that we have that context and we understand that it's kind of like not like building other apps, you need to think about the underlying messaging architecture. And so the key components of the application that we put together are, number one, we use publicly available open models, well, open or closed source models. We do both, and we can actually switch back and forth inside the bot. We can actually use multiple models inside the same Bookbot if it makes any sense to do it in certain cases. So we'll use, let's just say we use an LLM like ChatGPT for Omni. That might be the model. And in fact, some of the Bookbots I talked to you about earlier, they use for Omni Mini. On top of that, or wrapped around that is a better way to think about it, we have a layer of computation that allows us to do things that are not normally possible in a direct API interaction. So we can do lots of deterministic programming things with a non-deterministic AI model, which allows us to be more consistent in character, tone, voice, data output. You know, you want it to always say the same thing, we can make it do that. And so we had to create a whole layer in between the LLMs and the user themselves.
Makes sense.
And then on top of that, we have just I won't say our interface is the be-all end-all. As I said, it's a young product, it's new. But we have a chat interface that is familiar to people, but slightly different because of that middle deterministic layer. We do not stream the results back. Oftentimes we're computing results for you. So it's something, you'll see a little spin there. And that's an important point because this is what's different about a Bookbot from, just your average, hey, I made a chatbot on top of ChatGPT. It doesn't work the same way. So ultimately, when you take all that and you roll it up, we have a message passing architecture with a computational layer connected to a series of LLMs accessed through a typical chat style interface. And we store our data in a typical retrieval augmented generation fashion, or RAG would be the current term for it. Now, we did it before that term was made up. But that is what it is now. Somebody else made it up. We didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So it's effectively a form of a RAG app plus.
Is there like a minimum amount of information that you need to test to go create this, or like any number of books, any amount of content? Like, I guess where's the minimum bar for you to get the kind of results that makes it worthwhile to have a bot in this fashion? And I think this applies to almost like every other use case that's out there. And then how did you test for, things like accuracy and, the kinds of tone and the kinds of answers that the author would be proud of? So
for that minimum bar, what we need is something as much as think of it like a long report. We all get research reports and things like that all the time. That's going to be sufficient. So if it's a small book or a small book-like report, that's more than enough words for us to store in the database, vectorize, and give us enough context to be consistent in tone and voice and, represent the author well. Just as a flip side of that, we also can go very, very large. One of the books that we did this to was the Mahabharata, which most people have not and never will read the entire Mahabharata. It's unbelievably huge. But we did that and it works fine. And it's pretty fun to talk to. So the way that we guarantee to the best of our capabilities, listen, there are underlying issues with LLMs, hallucinations, and we'll just go with that. The guesswork they do when they don't know the answer, that's what a hallucination is. That still causes problems. but we can still do more because of that middle computational layer. What we do is effectively a form of red teaming or, quality assurance, and we do it with the authors because the authors know their material better than anybody, and they'll tend to bring in 2 or 3, and we just let them test it and beat it up and then give us back what doesn't look right, and then we can code that in to that middle layer so that we make adjustments. But these things are a little bit, wild still. So, we can't achieve perfection with these types of models today, but we do pretty well.
So I think what's really interesting for me is, and it sounds like you're focusing almost, is it 100% on nonfiction right now?
No, not at all.
So you do have fiction as well.
We do, and I was totally skeptical that would be useful, but we made a few, and it is interesting. One of the use cases that I do sometimes when I'm looking at fiction books, I go in and say, pretend like you're that character, whatever character it is, and it will actually attempt, using the book's knowledge, to become the character, right? And so one of the first books we did that with was Catcher in the Rye. And so I had a little fun with that one because I remembered it from high school.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about, on the fiction book side, and I'm going to tie this back into kind of like ramifications of, where what you're working on could lead to is, there's many people who, you get to the end of a series or the end of a book and you have this like moment of sadness because you finish the book, the story's over, the characters are done, the world is over. And there's many people who I would imagine would pay some money to keep exploring, keep staying in that world, explore it further, maybe have even other adventures that maybe even were hallucinations, but based upon, the underlying content. And I think that's a really interesting concept of where you could take fiction from there. And then if you think about what you're working on from, well, this is a proxy to the mind of the author, this book, this work. And then they're continuously dropping more content as they give a speech or they write a blog or, they create supplemental materials, or maybe their next book comes in and it becomes a, kind of like a broader corpus of knowledge that you're using to, recreate the proxy into their mind. I mean, does this create the foundation of something that one day could be something to where you kind of, I know there's companies working on concepts like, we'll take all the data of someone's life and give you a way to keep interacting with their memories or like a proxy into like their mind, or, even imaginary people who are like comfort people to you, whether it's, after the death of someone or something like that. Like, does this become almost like the foundation of what could become things like that because you're beginning to solve like the proxy of like how someone's knowledge is applied to what an answer should be in the terms of like an LLM, just kind of making its own, call of like what it thinks the answer should be. And does it lead to some interesting, future or where that some of that becomes,
Yeah.
You kind of get where I'm going with this.
I absolutely do. And it leads to some, when we talk about, say, collecting the body of a person's life work, I actually had this situation come up. Someone saw Bookbot, they called me, they had a friend who was sick. That friend was a well-known, very famous, incredibly prolific author, so I had a lot of material. And that person thought they were doing the other person a service by introducing me to them. And so I was like, okay, sure, let's get on the phone and get on a Zoom. And we get in the Zoom and the person was very upset, right? And I think it's really important that we talk about this because they were like, no, this digital demon won't steal my life's work. And I was just like, hi, my name's Kent. I was like, I didn't even, say anything. I said, but I'm not.
Nice to meet you as well.
I was like, I'm really not here to steal anything. I'm so sorry, let's just shake and go on, But I say this story because it was really woke me up. I was like, be careful sometimes, right, with what we say and how we say it, because there are people that it will trigger in a way that you don't necessarily enjoy. So the answer to your question, though, is are these baby steps, right, to creating something that could do that? I think so, because architectures that are necessary are going to be similar to this, but this is not complete. Like the way Bookbot works today, there are two or three things I can think of that have been invented since we did a major revision that I absolutely want to put in there. And I'm sending them to the devs all the time. They're like, "Can't please stop." Every time I find something that's more like how a mind works, I'm like, this could make Bookbots better. And we philosophically, ethically, morally, technically, we have to consider all those things. And I've just come to appreciate that a lot more after having a conversation like that with someone who I was told I might be able to help, but obviously didn't want much to do with me. So,
Sure.
There's that. And when we talk about people's, how do you embody someone's mind, especially after they're gone, it's really important that Bookbots are characters that are named by the authors, that are presented as a colleague effectively. And this goes into the area of human AI collaboration and helping one another do a thing, whatever the thing may be, and I just think that is probably one of the most powerful modalities of knowledge, expression, and consumption that humanity's ever created. And our Bookbot's a little part of that, this much, it's small, but it's on the journey.
I love that, and it'll be interesting to see where this all goes. I know that we are going to have many moral dilemmas that we'll have to face, because taking the someone's entire life's work plus all their social data and everything else that's ever been released out there, ingesting every video, every audio, and then combining that to where things are going with the generative video side of this equation, being able to replicate their voice, being able to replicate their appearance. I mean, there's some really big, juicy conversations that need to be had as we start leading towards this point, because I know that person who called you can't be the only person who's looking at what you're doing, what some others are doing, and saying, hey, could we do this for this loved one or that loved one, or this person?
Another another text to image generation model just came out, and there's a picture from it that's gone viral of a young woman on the TED stage giving a TED talk, and it looks real. It is absolutely looks real. It's fooling everybody. There are people out there going, that is definitely not a generated image. There are people like, oh, no, I actually generated the image. I'm telling you, it's a generated image. So, wow, talk about the uncanny valley, and whoop, we're jumping right over the, and I went in and I tested that, and because one of the things I try to do is help people get over the fear of using these tools, and because all the media wants to tell you, the mainstream media wants to tell you is it's going to take your job, it's going to eat your children, it's going to do all these horrible things, Terminator. And I'm just like, no, it's just slow down, learn. Have you ever used it? It's like the Tesla critic who's never been in, ridden, or knows anything about a Tesla. It doesn't hold water. So I found that as soon as people start to use these tools a little bit, they start making the leaps pretty fast to get to these types of questions that we're talking about here. And it's crucial that people understand how to use these tools, so that when we have those types of discussions, those deep, meaningful, necessary discussions, they're productive.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's going to take many smart people such as yourself and others, helping to have those conversations, educating, and really helping us, adopt from a place of safety and hope versus, the fear that happens, every time there's a transformation like this. So I appreciate that advice. I'd love to just switch gears a little bit. And could you share a little bit about your AI Advantage program that you just launched in July? I understand that it's focused on empowering people to leverage AI for their work effectively, and maybe this kind of coincides with what you just talked about.
Yeah, 100% overlap. I mean, I learned through probably a lot of trial and error and blood, sweat, and tears that I actually like to teach people things. And right now, I'm lucky in that there's something I know how to do that people need and want to learn. So I sat back and I asked myself, what could I teach people that's not like I don't want to make more word salads of technical jargon, right? That's not what I mean, I can do that, but that's not going to help anybody. So I said, what do people really need to know about AI to give them an advantage? And that's why I called it AI. It was pretty literal. And that's the engineer in me
right on the nose
coming out. And the marketing team made me make it look nice, but it's definitely, it does what it says. And so I said, well, I think I should just teach them how to use the tools the way I use the tools. Because I've been using these tools for a couple of years. They have literally changed my life. I don't write the same, read the same, probably don't even talk the same. I don't make websites the same. I don't run my life the same, because I have about 27 different artificial intelligence assistants that work for me when I need them on demand every single day. They don't replace me, but they augment me, and they make me oftentimes better, definitely faster, and they dramatically increase my capacity for creative, especially creative output, and then even dealing with normal day-to-day work problems. I said, that's what I'm going to teach people. I'm just going to teach people how to do that. So I took all my assistants. I found the 3 that I use the most. I built a whole workshop around that. And then I said, I'm going to make it fast. If you come to the workshop, within an hour, you're going to have actionable steps you can take that will actually move you forward. Even if you just drop off the call right then and you leave, the first one's free. The first session of the thing's free anyway. And you're going to leave less afraid and more capable than you came in the door. That's my goal, right? And if I achieve that, I already won. And then if they stay for sessions 2 and 3, then they start to be able to build assistants that they can apply to their own work streams inside their own company to achieve whatever their goals are that organization might have. And that's where actually transformation starts. It starts with the little thing that connects to the other 2 or 3 people, that connects to the whole company, and then that company, maybe another company in the region does that, and then they already can work together a little bit better. Because it turns out that these assistants, when you make them, become incredible interfaces for communications. And most people don't think about them that way. They think, what can it do for me? No.
Sure.
It can make you a better communicator. And that's really cool.
Really cool. Yeah, I mean, and we know that part of the issue right now is just the lack of education, the lack of adoption, figuring out how to tailor these things towards yourself, and then ultimately aligning towards a longer term benefit for not just you personally, but like what you're trying to accomplish, I think is a really big place that we're at right now. So applaud you for the work that you're putting in there on that front, and helping people get that much better.
Thank you. I could share a quick example with you if you'd like.
If you've got some good examples of that, I would love to see.
Really quick one. I work with an executive assistant, and I needed to conduct 26 interviews. And I looked at how much time it was going to take me to prep for those.
So that was like Thursday for you.
Right, exactly. And I calculated that I needed 600 minutes just to prep time. And I'm like, I don't have 600 minutes. That's a lot of minutes. So I made an assistant that did all the stuff I need to do for the prep, and I gave it a bunch of command capabilities. I got my EA online, I taught him how to use it. I gave him the list of people I needed to interview, and I said, now go book the interviews, run this template through this agent, and then when you're done, put it in a Google Doc in this other template format, and then put that link to that Google Doc in the calendar invite for my prep time. He's like, okay, got it. I showed him one time, and then he went and did all the others. So I've not had to do all those many minutes of work per call again since I set that up. Now there's a lot of detail I'm leaving out here to make that work really, really
Sure.
well. But what did that do? 2 key things. Number one, saved me a lot of time, at least 600 minutes, probably a lot more. Made me a better interviewer for sure, because I knew way more going into the call with just 10 minutes of review prior to getting on the video call. And it created a better interface of communication between myself and my EA.
Yeah, that's spectacular. Well, Kent, I know we're running up to it on time, and I want to be respectful to yourself. I know you're a very busy person. Thanks for the wonderful conversations today. I mean, I would love to have a follow-up discussion, to get in talking more about the Internet of Animals and some of the other use cases that I know you're really excited about. And we can definitely follow up on the side for the Internet for Animals. we'll see where we can go take that as well.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really grateful to be on your show, and I wish you the best of luck with everything. Let me know if I can help in any way.
Thank you, Kent. You as well.
You've been listening to LiveAI. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation. This episode is sponsored by Trace3. To learn more about why you should connect with them, about your enterprise practical AI use case, visit them at trace3.com or look for them on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.